Hi there, it's Simon Goving here again with another Friday video, and today we're going to study a small app that covers quite a few little things that will be really useful for doing games. This is what I call a bouncing ball app, and it's just an icon of vizwik that bounces around, and it bounces inside of the constraints of the view. So I'm going to stop it here and show you how that works. The key to the whole thing is this call to is bounds or is in bounds. And what is in bounds does is it takes a bounding view, and here we can look at it, a bounding view, which is in this case the view of the app, and a bounded view, which is another piece of content, which happens to be this little logo. And what it does is it returns back true or false, telling you whether or not the bounded view, which is the icon, is inside of the bounding view. And then you can do something with that. And what we do with it is basically decide whether we're going to make it bounce or not. So how does that work? Well, the first thing we do is we grab our icon here, and we have to calculate where the bounds of the view are. And because when you have an init function, which is going to be on the view itself, what we can do is set up a couple of variables. We're going to do 4 of them. The first 2 are the dx and dy, or if you've done calculus, this is the change in x and the change in y. It's basically just some geeky way of numbering a couple of variables. But what it does is it's the amount of distance that I'm going to change in the x direction and the y direction to make the icon move. Now, the other thing is we're going to need to create what the width and the height are when we're testing the bounds. And what I need to do is make sure that I test the bounds within the bounds of the image inside the view. And so I have to subtract the image's width and height from the view's width and height, because I don't want this to go all the way to the edge and then go out to test the width and height. I want it to be testing it whether or not it's within this bounds here, which is the location. And the reason I need to do that is because the zero point of the origin of an icon is actually in the top left corner. So you have to actually subtract that in order to make it work. It's not in the center or in the bottom corner. It's in the top left corner. So we do this little calculation when the app first starts. And then what we do is when I click on the icon, it runs the start method. And what that does is essentially calls a periodic timer for 30 milliseconds and runs the update script, which is where we go back to where we were earlier, and this is where all the meat of it happens. So we're going to take the image and we're going to modify its location by calling change location by the dx and dy, or the change in x and the change in y, which makes it move. Then we're going to say, is the image inside the bounds of the view? And I'm going to say yes or no. And if it's false, in other words, it's outside the bounds, then what I'm going to do is call bounce. And in fact, I'm printing out a little hit here that shows you that it's hit the bounds every time. What does bounce do? Well, actually, just to let you know, there's nothing that happens if it's inside the bounds, because we don't want to do anything. But if it's outside the bounds, what we have to do is we have to change the direction of the change of dx and dy to make it either negative or positive, so that it starts removing number of pixels rather than adding number of pixels in order to make it bounce. And what that is basically, if we call bounce, is a simple function that says get the location of the image and then determine whether or not it is greater or less than or equal to that location of the width. And if it is, flip the value. And there I'm going to call flip value. If it is less than 0, I'm going to flip it in the again. And if it isn't either of those, then I'm just going to leave it alone. And I do the same thing for the y. Okay, what does flip value do? Well, it takes this variable dx and dy, and here's a new thing that you haven't probably seen, is that you can take a set and get variable operator and actually pass it the name of the variable that you're going to change. And if you create a double click, I'm going to create a new one here. And if you create the variable here, normally you would type in dx like this, and then you would get the variable name. But what I'm going to do is if you move your cursor over to the top, you can double click on the top, and then you pass in the name as a parameter. And it just changes the name to star, which means whatever you've passed in is going to be the thing that I'm going to change. And so you can do this dynamically. And the way that this works is that it means that this flip value can work for both dx and dy variables, and essentially gets the value of dx, multiplies it by -1 to flip it back and forth, and then sets the value back to dx again, or dy, depending on what I pass in. And this is where I'm passing it in here. So that's about it. Not much to the app, but basically it's basic geometry, and then just using this is in bounds, which means that you don't have to check all of the bounding conditions, and makes your app run nice and smooth. So all you have to do is click on it, and away it goes, and it starts bouncing around. So there you go. Create your new game and enjoy playing with vizwik.